in going after the dream, we're never promised the achievement of it. But that doesn't mean it's not worth making every effort to make it come into reality. When I was 16 years old, I sponsored Jose through Compassion International. And I never imagined how that simple act would actually change the trajectory of my life forever. See, at the time, I only had $100 and I had no sources of income. And to sponsor him, it was $38 per month. And I realized I have an opportunity here to find out if trusting God is worth it. If it actually works to do that financially. And what I wanted was to sponsor Jose through Compassion International. But what I really wanted beneath that was to find out, is God worth trusting with my money? Is that a wise decision? Because I knew at this point in my life that it was a really low stakes way for me to find out if this worked or not. That if I couldn't continue to pay to sponsor him, then I still had food. I still had a place to live. I still had a place to sleep. And if it didn't come through, then I wouldn't need to tithe. I wouldn't need to do these things for the rest of my life. And so what happened was I decided to sponsor Jose. And I knew, okay, I've got $100, so I've got about 2 months until I need to actually do this and move forward in such a way. And so that's what I did. I started taking action. I went to 3 different grocery stores that were in my area, less than maybe a mile or 2 away from my house. And I struck out at all of them. And so this was about a month in or so, and I'm going, okay, I don't know what to do. So then I went, well, what should I do? I should try to find someone who's farther along in life or has wisdom or knowledge that I don't have. And so I actually went to my dad and I went, hey, like, do you know any other options? Like, what am I missing here? And he said, oh, I think there's a Ralph's down the street. And I didn't know that. So then I went, oh, cool, okay. So I went down to that Ralph's, and I talked with their manager. They said, nope, we're not hiring, but there's a Food for Less across the street. And so I went, oh, cool. I had been to that Food for Less just a handful of times. I didn't really register it as a place to go. So then I went over there, and I waited for about 3 hours to talk with the manager. His name was Raul. And then we did get to talk, and he said, yeah, come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. And we'll do like an interview and see what's going to go on from there. So then the next day, come back at 9:50, I'm there early. And then what happens is we actually don't get the chance to talk until almost 1 p.m. So instead of just standing around and doing nothing, I find an aisle and I make like all the cans, all the labels stand where the labels are facing outward, and I'm also taking time to actually learn where different things are in the store. And then we actually have a conversation, and he goes, yeah, like he basically just hired me after about a 10-minute conversation. And what was amazing about that was that I was one of only 2 minors that were ever hired at that store. About 3 months after that, he got transferred to another store, and he never came back to that store. They transfer managers every 6 months, or I don't remember exactly, but he didn't come back, and no other manager in the district hired minors except for him. And over the next 3 years while I did work there I was one of those 2 minors. And what was also cool was being at Food for Less was actually the place where I got to see how simply speaking Spanish could bring so much joy and help to other people, and how it could actually be something that helped people find what they were looking for and be able to leave the store faster, because no one really wants to spend a lot of time in a grocery store. So then in 2018, there was a trip to see Jose in Ecuador. And this was a light bulb moment for me. I went, oh my goodness, it's possible to actually like visit him and see him. That's amazing. And I wanted to do that so badly. But I didn't have the resources to do this at the time. And it had reminded me of that dream that I had had a couple of years earlier that I had written down in 2016, and so it just kind of reignited that thought process of what if I could do this. And at that time in 2018, I had just finished Thrive School. I had made a resolution that the next trip that was offered by Compassion, I would be in a place financially to where I could afford to do it. And so during that summer of 2018, I actually was able to work full-time. I was living in Sacramento, but I was working 45 to 50 hours a week in San Francisco. I was also working about 10 hours on Sunday at Vintage Grace. So I was working about 55 to 60 hours and driving Sunday nights to San Francisco, Friday nights back to Sacramento. And just really looking for like, what are the opportunities? What are the ways that I can be in a place to where I can actually bring this into reality in my life. So the problem that I faced at the end of 2019 was this. I got an email from Compassion, and they said, hey, we've got a trip. It's in June of 2020. And I was so excited. And I was also scared. Because over the last year and a half or 2 years at that point, I had been able to save about $10,000 while I was still in school full time. And about half of that was in an emergency fund, and the other half of that was towards other things. And it meant spending almost all that non-emergency fund money that had taken me almost 2 years to save. And I don't know about you if you've ever felt this tension within yourself where you're like, I know I need to do this, and I'm terrified. And I couldn't do it in 2018 because I didn't have the money. But in 2019, beginning of 2020, I did, and now is a choice. Am I going to actually go after the thing that I've wanted to do, or am I going to stay in comfort? And so I paid the initial $400 deposit in the end of 2019, and then it's January 1st, 2020. And I remember sitting at my computer. My palms are sweating, and just looking at spending $3,200 and change, $3,300 in one go is the most money I've spent on one thing at one time in my life. And letting go of that was so hard. And after many deep breaths and prayers and probably about 10 to 15 minutes, I hit the pay now button. And at that point, I also decided to take Spanish 4 and a conversational class to be able to finish my associates in Spanish, even though I hadn't done any Spanish in almost 4 years. So now I'm investing time, money, effort to prepare myself to actually enjoy this experience to the best of my ability. And then at the end of March, COVID-19 hits. And at first it's just 2 weeks, and I didn't even consider it having any impact on my trip. That wasn't even a possibility in my mind. And then in April, I got the official email. Trip is canceled. And I was really sad. Like, I had spent the most money for one thing ever. Like, I had taken classes specifically for this trip. I had, there was just a lot of emotional weight and effort and years of life put into being able to do this. And then it got canceled. And not only that, but they did refund all the money, which I was so grateful for. And it was such an odd feeling because I had made a conscious choice that this was worth the value I was putting into it, and to then get that back, although I was so grateful, was also just a really like confusing feeling. And now this dream had been put off once again. And what I couldn't see at that point that I can now was that that trip taught me how to release and let go and hold my money more loosely. And that even though I didn't go to Ecuador with Compassion International, it did then cause me 6 months later to go to Ecuador. And that in going, I realized that I was resting for the first time in a way that I never had before. I took 20 days off, and since I started working at 16, I had only taken 2 1-week like vacations, weeks off, whatever, in between school and work in the last 8 years. So that was the longest break that I'd ever had. And then I've actually come back to Ecuador a second time. That's what I'm in the midst of right now. I've just started my second month being here, so I'm at my 31st, 32nd day. And I'll be able to share a little bit more about that, but I've learned so much about having peace and perspective and the balance of both ands rather than either ors. And I also don't know for sure if I'll be able to visit Jose while I'm here. A part of what it looks like to be someone who lives by faith, is known by love, and is a voice of hope. It's someone who dreams great dreams and has the courage to go after them, is the understanding and the peace knowing that going after a dream does not mean the achievement of it. And at this point, I've sent emails to Compassion. I'm trying to figure out, like, right now Jose is doing school remotely, and so I'm in the process of trying to figure out, like, can I visit him? So far, all I've gotten are no's, but I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm pretty confident there's a way to make this happen, and I'm going to continue to look at what are the things that I could be missing. Are there, like, what are the options that I haven't yet considered? Because this is something that I'm going to do at some point. And even if it's as simple as a Zoom call or something like that with a, like, I don't know what but I'm sure there are other options available. And I think that's a valuable thing to know, that in the midst of the dream, there's a space where it's not known, and that's okay, and it's still worth pursuing. So my prayer for us is that we'd become people who live by faith, are known by love, and are voices of hope. That we would dream great dreams and have the courage to go after them. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast or watching this. Please rate this 5 stars on Spotify, on iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave a review. Let me know what stood out to you. And also share on social media. You can tag me at Daniel Barnes, DanielBaarns. That's Bravo, Alpha, Alpha, Roger, Nancy, Sam, 2 A's, no E. And I am so grateful to each and every one of you for watching and listening to this. Adios.